And here we go. How you getting on, Melissa?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be a very new experience for me. I can already tell.
I hope no, in a good way. In fairness,
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Anything that's something I haven't done before is good. It's like plunging into a place I've never been, and I love that.
well, there you go. Funny enough, you've never been to Ireland, so I guess this is as close as we're getting.
Exactly. I'll get there though. Do not fear.
So, for anyone who may not know you, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Melissa Bernstein. And gosh, for 32 years, I have co run a toy company with my husband, Doug, called Melissa and Doug. And we make toys for children that really spark their imaginations. We call it open ended. They're not toys that talk to you, they're toys that you must, as a child, engage with to unleash their potential. And then when everyone thought my life was over and I would sail off into the sunset, I decided to come out with my life changing memoir about how I have struggled for my whole life with something very little known called existential depression, which is this deep, dark crisis of meaning that I had ever since I was born.
I suppose that's a good place as any to start. Obviously, we like it is very little known. We wouldn't know much about it ourselves. So, what's it about?
Sure. It's pretty deep, and many say it's not even a pathological condition, it's a philosophical condition, which is why it's not really in the journals of conditions because it generally is thought to not be able to be treated with traditional pharmacology. So it is a crisis of meaning, which now that we've gone through COVID, many say, "Ooh, I get what that is because I was triggered by COVID into a crisis of meaning." But for me, there was no trigger. I was born with these three questions that would not leave my head. One was, why am I here? The second was, what is the meaning of life if we are ultimately going to die? And the third was, okay, now what am I supposed to do during my brief time here, knowing that my life is going to end soon? And because I couldn't even verbalize these questions, much less get concrete answers to them, it led me to a very, very dark place where I thought, oh my gosh, there is no meaning to existence. And I, as a person, am not able to make meaning in a meaningless existence.
That's rough. I can't even begin to imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah, it's so rough, and I think many who fall into existential nihilism, which is the darkest form of existential despair, they do end their lives because you are utterly, and I was utterly hopeless. But thank goodness I did, and because I did find my way out of that deep dark cavern that wanted to submerge me and told me to end my life, I wanted to help others who might be stuck down there and not see that crack of light. And I wanted to help others climb out and show them the light to climb out of that abyss.
And in exploring this topic, I guess your whole life, um, have you begun to find the answers you're looking for, or
I absolutely have, which is the incredible part of the story. It doesn't mean every day is like
yeah,
butterflies and
Yeah,
rainbows,
of
because
course.
that is not true. And that's the other thing I'm here to say is those of us who are afflicted, because I have a condition, and if I get in my head for more than like 20 seconds, I go there, like even today. So I have to engage in a continual practice. But my path to sort of fulfillment took two paths, which is pretty cool. So one of them was a psychotherapeutic path because what happened, so I was born with these really deep, dark feelings. Like the minute I had awareness, I had thoughts, I had these questions. And I mean, they were really dark. And, uh, and it was almost impossible to live with this voice in my head saying, it's all futile, it's meaningless, nothing you do will ever matter, like end it. And that was basically what the voice in my head said my whole life. and because some part of me didn't want to end it. Like I was also very curious, and the same curiosity that made me ponder these higher realities like our mortality also led me to want the answer to it. So because I needed to live and I didn't want to take my life, I submerged, disassociated, and denied everything I was feeling. And I put on a facade. Like I ended up adopting this perfect persona that never made mistakes, that was like really seemingly carefree, that achieved continually for the validation I needed, because who I was in this darkness, I got that message very early on that it would never be accepted. So when I ultimately kind of cracked, which wasn't until middle age, I put on this shiny facade for as long as I could. But when you deny everything you're feeling and everything you are, it is utterly exhausting. And I got to the point where the pain I was feeling, the resistance I was doing to resist everything I felt, created such suffering in me that I ultimately, it was like a dam that held it all back, started to crack, because you can only do it for so long. And the cry of my soul to be seen authentically was like so loud. It was louder than the drumbeat of mortality. It was like these two competing drum beats. And I finally took two paths. The one was psychotherapeutic, because I realized that I first needed to accept who I was, because I had built this facade that was purely a shell and depended on external validation to give me my self-worth. And I knew that wasn't giving me self-worth, and I was still completely and utterly empty inside. So I had to enlist the help of a therapist for the first time ever and admit I was broken, because therapy equaled like flawed and weak. So it took middle age for me to admit that. I took the journey inward, and finally, after it took 4 years, accepted kind of who I was, and that I'm a whole spectrum of emotion, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. And I'm really extreme because I'm a creative. So I go really high and I go really low. And when I'm high, I don't want to come down, because it's like being on drugs. It's like the best euphoria ever. And when I'm low, I want to end it. Like I'm so low. So it's very extreme. And then so that brought me self-acceptance. That brought me, okay, I get it. This is who I am, and I accept it now, and I allow it, even though it's challenging to live in a world when your sensitivities are so great. But I accept it because it gives me the ability to create. And I saw that my curse of a personality was also my blessing. So I had a blurse. So that was cool, but that still didn't bring me my meaning. And I was still struggling with that meaning. Like, what is it all about if we are going to die? And that path became my own path. No one led me down it, of philosophy, because I realized that philosophy is the antidote to crises of meaning. And many wiser minds than mine pondered these deep, dark questions, like from the beginning of time. And I never in my life had studied philosophy. I never thought about it. But something just, in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, that's what started my philosophical journey. And as I started reading about these folks that had similar crises of meaning and had to ponder why, and had to figure out strategies to not take their lives and to find meaning, I realized my answer was in that. So I studied some of the wisest and most inspiring philosophers ever, and ended up finding my pathway in meaning just like they did through that. Sorry, that was really long. But
no, that's good. That's good. Like, well, not the topic as a whole, but you know what I mean. Is there any of name like that you looked into?
oh my gosh, so many. And I'll tell you my favorites. So, Viktor Frankl, his book Man's Search for Meaning really changed my life, because he was in a concentration camp and had a complete meaning crisis, like what is the point, and had to find his way, and then became an existential psychotherapist. So he took his darkness and really transformed it into light, and his whole family was killed. I mean, his story is incredible. And then
I think
from
I've heard of
there,
that.
oh my gosh, Friedrich Nietzsche is like, I mean, we have written very similar words because I write verses to ponder these things, and some of them are uncannily the same. And I think those of us that ponder the same things, there are only so many words in the English language. So, I love him. He's maybe my favorite philosopher. And Heidegger talks a lot about inauthentic living, and between inauthenticity and authenticity is this deep well of anxiety. And so many of us think that when we start to feel anxiety in our lives, that we have to run the other way, or we have to medicate it, or we have to avoid it or deny it. And actually, all these brilliant philosophers, they say it's the opposite. Anxiety is actually essential for growth and transcendence. And for me, that was so powerful because I always ran away from it, right? I was like, I can't feel this. It's bad to feel these feelings, when actually the only way out is through. And it was only when I went into the feelings and realized that they are part of me. And when I run away from them, I'm running away from myself, that I discovered who I truly was. So Heidegger, Soren Kierkegaard is the father of existential philosophy. And he has a quote that's like one of my favorites, which is, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. And I think when we have lots of possibility, whether it's the way we are to act or the potential of everything that we can create and make, it's terrifying to so many of us that we hide in inauthenticity because we are terrified of the power of our own potential. So that was really powerful. And who else do I love? There's so many. It goes on and on. Jean-Paul Sartre, he's really powerful. There are many. It goes on and on. But
Anyone of note, like in modern times,
anyone in modern times?
like someone who's still at it at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I follow Emmy van Derzen a lot, and she's actually, so in Europe, existential psycho, or they don't even call it, this is the coolest thing, they don't even call it psychotherapy. In Europe, they call it existential therapy, because it's not the traditional psycho model. They used to call it psychotherapy, but they've changed it because they truly believe it's philosophical, and it's about, like, what do I do to find meaning in my life? And that's very different than the traditional Freudian model, where we like analyze the personality and go back to childhood and all that stuff. Now, I had to do some of that stuff because I had a lot of repressed trauma too from my childhood. So part of accepting myself was that cognitive behavioral therapy and going that route. But for meaning, I completely agree that it's just therapeutic. And it's really about asking yourself these deep questions about what is important to you, what do you value, and making your values consistent with your actions, which so many of us growing up in a society that like tells us what to do and we feel like we have to abide by, we go against who we are. We never discover who we are. We become someone we think others want us to be. And it's no wonder we're so depressed. I mean, when you are someone else and you're manifesting someone else's truth, not your own, I mean, you are bound to become despairing.
You're definitely right there,
I think you
especially
nailed it
with
in the
like
head.
the rise of social media has definitely done way
Yes.
more damage than good in that perspective, in falseness online and the image of
Exactly.
false, and it has just
Yeah,
destroyed
because
us.
you end up playing a character. Well, for some people, they end up playing a character, which it's
Exactly.
unfortunate.
And even I created these toys, my for 30 plus years, basically my whole life, since I was in my 20s. This was like my first child. And even though it was so authentic in channeling my despair into these light, bright toys, I even felt I was hiding behind this toy. Like, because the toys were so joyous and joyful and playful, but I knew the despair that birthed them. And I felt like while that person behind the toy was hiding her despair, from herself and the world, I was also living a lie. So lesser, and I still felt inauthentic. So the point is, those of us that are really living the lie, that are truly hiding who we are, I can't imagine how they feel. Because I was actually doing my salvation in channeling the darkness into light, but I still felt inauthentic.
And when you kind of said to yourself, I need to get some therapy. How difficult was that for you? Because as you said beforehand, a lot of people do see it as, okay, the person is like broken basically.
It was so difficult. I mean, it was because my whole facade was, I can do this alone. I don't need any help. I'm an island. Like, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to put on this hard exterior and I'm just going to fight through whatever happens to me. And basically, what happened is I wasn't able to fight anymore. You know, I became so weak from just fighting too long. And one of my misperceptions that really ruled my life was, I don't need anyone. I can do it alone. Asking for help is weakness. And I now see it's the 180-degree opposite. Like, asking for help and saying that I can't do it is the strongest thing you can do. Like, but literally, I would have, sworn to anyone that it was the opposite. So I think it's very hard when your whole mantra is, I don't need you. I don't need anyone. I'm a rock. I'm an island. I mean, that's what I always said. Like, no one will ever understand me. No one can help me. Because that's what I believed. Because I had been rejected for so many years for being this introverted, heady creative that asks too many questions, that mutters to herself, that is very soulful and feels very deeply and gets emotional very easily. So I knew that that person wasn't really the image of what a acceptable person is, at least in our society. So I hid that, and part of that was hiding that I was human. It was like, I'm going to be this robotic person that can just do everything. So I think it took a lot of courage on my part to say, I need this help. But now I'm like so far to the other that I'm so proud to say. In fact, the other day I was dropping my son at school, and we usually take the dogs with us to drop him off. But Wednesdays are my therapy appointment. And I still go, every week, and I will the rest of my life, just because it's part of my practice now that I have to do. And it's like, for me, an hour where I can pay someone to listen to me and I don't have to give anything in return. So that day we didn't take the dogs because I go right from dropping him off. And he was like, why aren't we taking the dogs today? And I was like, oh, I have an appointment right after. And he's like, what appointment? I said, my therapy appointment. And he looked at me, he's 13. He was like, therapy? I'm like, yeah, I go to someone every Wednesday. I would have never said this. Like, even 2 years ago, he goes, what do you mean you go to someone? I'm like, I go to someone to talk to. He's like, what do you talk about? I go, anything that comes up, things I'm having a hard time with. And he goes, that's weird. But, and sort of was the end of the conversation. But, just the fact that I'm trying to normalize this so that it doesn't happen to another generation makes me so proud. Because in my family, like, you didn't talk about feelings. You certainly didn't talk about mental health. And you never went to a therapist, or like, you were so broken in a very bad way.
It's very stigmatized, isn't it? Like, it's seen as this very negative thing, whereas, like, for yourself, it's been such a positive thing, and something that you want to share the message that go to therapy, it's good for you, But I don't even know why it's a...
Yeah, Messi, what do you attribute it to? What do you think people stigmatize going to therapy?
Well, because I think we all saw the movie, at least here, we saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I know, it really is. But I think it's the idea that you're crazy and that you're unstable and that you're going to do something radical. And it's portrayed as something that only really weird people have. It's just this idea that, and it's almost like I don't want to go near it. It's so weird. And that's why it was, and in at least American culture, like it's not part of the societal myth. I mean, being sad, it's all about the pursuit of happiness. We are chasing this dream that is butterflies, rainbows, white picket fences, like running barefoot. It's always sunny. Like there's never clouds in any photos about like families. It's always
outside my window right now.
yeah, I mean the sun is always shining. And truly, if we're the full emotional spectrum, I mean the sunshine is only like a little bit of it. Like more than half of it is like cloudy, but it's not part of our way of thinking. So you just get this sense that it's just wrong. And I think everything gets deemed good and bad. And, for me, there were good feelings and there were bad feelings. And the only good feeling was, I'm great. I'm fine. Everything's okay. Nothing that was, you were never allowed to be sad.
And you were saying this was a thing within your family as well. So what was it like telling your family that you were going to therapy or that you were experiencing these things? Or have you?
I mean, I only told them for the very first time. I mean, my parents, if you're talking versus my family, my family that I grew up with, I only told them because I was coming out with a book and I knew they were going to read about it. And so it was pretty crazy. And then the reaction was even crazier. My father said, it's hard to believe that because you were so optimistic as a child. And you seemed so carefree and that everything was fine. And that made me, I had to sit on that like a week because I was so horribly sad as a child. So I didn't know whether it was he just didn't notice or it was my compensation with the facade was so effective that I hid it. Like it was, either one wasn't good. And I was like, wow, I either did a really good job of hiding it or you were really oblivious. So it was kind of surreal. And then my mother said something like, well, no matter how I feel, I tried my best to just be happy. Like I want to, and I get it. Like she was basically saying like, whatever I feel, I deny it because I just try to be happy. And that's what we all do. Like it was honest and I so appreciated that, but that is what we do as a society and what I did with my own kids because it's all I knew. So I'm trying now. It's so hard for me to accept people when they're sad because it's what I wanted so desperately, yet when my own kids do it, I want to deny it. I want to fix it. I want to get them happy because I'm immediately triggered like, I don't want you to be sad because something bad's going to happen if you're sad. Like, I need to get you happy right now. And I'm like, quick fix. Like, what's wrong with you? How can we fix it? When that is not what people who are in a dark place want at all. They just want to be seen exactly in that moment as they are. So it's the wrong way to respond, but it is all our natural tendency.
I think that's the only way I've ever seen it handled. Because you said that, and I was like, "Is that's how it happens with I guess most people I know. That's kind of the thing over here. You got a problem. How do we fix it? Go from there."
Absolutely. That's our culture. It's like fix it, move on, wipe it off, get up, get going. And that was what I did. I mean, but what you resist persists. That's sort of the mantra. And the more you push it down, the more it festers. So I now know that is actually not the way to handle it. And every day, because I do have 6 children, I'm allowed to try to remake the past. And I think when we can take something that's been so generational, and I feel like so much of these patterns and behaviors it started at the very beginning of time, and we just keep pushing it forward, all our crap on the next generation. It's like, here you go, honey, take all my crap because I didn't figure it out. And when one of us can finally say, enough already, I'm done with your crap. I'm going to shed those leaves and I'm going to, break free of that paradigm. It's so incredible. And that's what I say to so many people who are now trying to break free of their crap from the past and move forward fresh. I'm like, you have to do it for the next generation to like show them that you can break this generational trauma and start fresh so that they can be free of it. I mean, it's the best gift you can give your children.
Yeah. And you were saying beforehand, like you're worried for, was it the coming generation? Because of, all the mental health stuff going on. What do you think can even be done?
That's a great question. And I think
it's a hard one.
It's what did you say?
I said it's a hard one as well.
It is, but we think about this all the time. And I think COVID had so many horrific things to come out of it. But one of the blessings is it showed the world that anyone can be at risk for a mental health issue. Because I think so many people who thought they were sort of okay, right? And many said, oh, I've never experienced any sort of despair or questioning life's meaning or isolation, experienced it in a big way. They were suddenly like everything that meant something to them, all their distractions, right? All the activity they engaged in that they thought brought their life meaning, like shattered in an instant. And they were forced to really look inside for maybe the very first time. So if their life was built on external validation or external activity or distractions, suddenly they were having to face themselves. And I think this brought a lot of folks anxiety that didn't have it before. So I think this is a wake-up call for our world that we all need a practice before the curveball hits you in the face. So here in America, we have physical education from kindergarten on. Literally, you take it as a class, everyone through high school. And they feel like it's so important to build up your body muscles ahead of time, right? So that you can like thwart any injuries, you can thwart illness. They talk about health and that type of thing, healthy eating. They talk about all the physical stuff, yet we don't at all talk about emotional and mental fortitude, resistance, how to understand how we'll react to things, how to build that, like those tools. So when the curveball hits us, when the next pandemic hits us, when someone, God forbid, dies close to us, when we lose a job, when we have a transition, right? A transition that can seem very exciting, like high school to college. But for many, that's something that they have no emotional fortitude these days to handle. So knowing that curveball, which was COVID, can hit us, and it's not going to be just COVID. Like, I think we avoid the inevitable, which is going to be, a job loss, a person we love dying, retirement, a divorce, like anything, a breakup earlier on, an F on a test. I mean, it could be anything depending on your emotional, composition, even not getting selected for a team, like depending on how sensitive you are. I mean, people like do dire things sometimes when they don't get selected. I mean, I almost wanted to end my life when I didn't get into a sorority I wanted to get in. So, and I had zero ability to cope with the emotional fallout from being rejected by my peers because I had never built any of those tools. So, I have now, because I realize that I can be very high and very low, I have what I call my backpack of lifelines. And that is my daily practice to remain what I call equanimously in the middle. Not that I'm trying to cling to the middle, but it grounds me in either direction. When I'm too high and I don't want to come back down, it brings me down because I have to, I'm living on this earth and I do want to live on this earth and be there for my family. And when I'm too low and I don't want to get out of bed, it kind of supports me so I can get out of bed and do what I need to do. So I want this practice to be part of life from preschool on, because I want us to support our emotional resilience just like we do our physical.
Yeah, that's deep. Fortunately, over here we've had something along the lines of what you're talking about. Like we've had some serious, I guess, resources put towards mental health for students. Like some serious stuff. Like it wasn't talking about your mental health wasn't even a thing in Ireland 5 years ago, and then they went deep with it. They went really hard on it, and thankfully it's a thing in schools. Some would say there's more to be done, but in comparison to what we might have had when we started school, a huge difference, which is great to see. Well,
That's
it's kind of
incredible.
funny, at least in our school, the mental health thing was a thing before the physical education thing was, because it only became a subject when we were leaving. So, bit of a reverse there.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I think the more that we do that, and the more we say that it's necessary, because it comes with realizing that life isn't just about the pursuit of happiness, and it's about accepting the full spectrum of everything that will happen. That we start to realize we need these tools, and they have to be integrated into our daily lives every single day. So the idea of a practice, it's not just accepting that you feel a bunch of things. It's because life will inevitably have highs and lows. How do we support ourselves during the swings?
Yeah, I like how you compared it to weather. Like it's not always sunny, often it's cloudy, but doesn't mean it's raining. Like, so
Exactly.
it's going to be a mix of everything. But unfortunately, if you live in Ireland, it's rain or snow or yeah, doesn't work here sadly. I think we have Irish weather is something awful.
Well,
Uh,
that's why you need
bring
those
your
tools.
umbrella.
I would say you need those tools more than others then, because you do in a way, like you're at least the weather is going to be on the lower side of the emotional spectrum, and that means you're going to need even more of your own tools to make your days sunny on the days when it's not.
Yeah, I like the way you approach it. I like the way you talk about it, and I really like your openness about it because a lot of people go through stuff, but some kind of like just as you were saying before, put it deep, ignore it, won't talk to people about it. But then you wrote this book about it, right? And you've been talking about it since. What did it take for you to go put pen to paper?
That's a great question. I think it took a lifetime of not putting pen to paper and hiding it all in the darkness. And finally, I knew, I was basically, I had to go into the abyss between inauthenticity and authenticity in order to come out and say, like, I can't do this anymore. If I'm going to be authentic, I have to share exactly who I am, and I have to help others do the same thing. So it was about me to start, but my mission became like, if I'm just doing this in middle age, oh my gosh, how many others are stuck also and can't get out. And I don't want others to be stuck till middle age. I want all these young folks who are 18, 20 to realize that it's okay to be exactly who you are. And it's okay to say, I don't want to be what society wants me to be. I want to be this or that. And to develop the courage to say that. Sometimes it's tough conversations to say to your parents, I know you want me to be a doctor, but like, I don't want to be a doctor. It's gonna hurt my soul to do something that pleases you and doesn't please me at all. So I want to give people the courage to be able to do that. And I think I could only do that through one, sharing this story in all its rawness, because I couldn't shroud it in anything, because that was the point. That would have been my life. And my toys are in this beautiful packaging with, a shiny logo. And that's what I had done. I had taken the darkness, channeled it into light, and made 10,000 toys. And I was still feeling inauthentic. So I knew that this had to be as raw as it could get. And because of that, I couldn't even do it in the traditional way of going through a traditional publisher. because all the traditional publishers were like, it's too dark. It's not going to relate to enough people. It has verses in it. Who wants to read verses? Simple ones, no less. And no one will buy it like this. And that's what I was told. So Doug and I decided we were going to publish it on our own and not go that traditional route, so we could make it exactly how we wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
That's rough. People were saying like it wouldn't go anywhere. That's especially
Yeah.
when it's something as deep and
it's really painful, but it's been part of my journey all along. People saying that what emerged most authentically out of me wouldn't be accepted. It happened with the toys too. And but you know what? When you vibe your truth and when you're doing something different than convention, that's what people are going to always say. And that's what I've realized now. I mean, we've sold close to 1 billion units of toys. Like, we have sold a crap load of toys. So you know what? We've proven that, like, simplicity, when it works and it resonates in a huge way. And my book, it hit #1 on all Amazon. It's a memoir with verse that everyone said will never sell. So I think it's just about when you do something authentically, whether it's been successful before or not, doesn't even matter, because if you do it in your own unique way, then maybe you'll be the first. Maybe you'll be the first that has a memoir with verse that changes the world. Or maybe you'll be the first that comes out with a simple wooden toy that sells millions of units. So I'm very quick to get upset when people judge other people's creativity, because they're only judging it from the eyes of what's been done before. And anything you do that is truly revelatory can't be judged. It can only be judged in the hands of the audience you're trying to serve. And they can judge it, but can someone on the outside that doesn't have that experience? Not a chance. And in fact, if they judge it as unworthy, that might actually mean that you're doing something that has never been done before.
Well, number one, congratulations on how high it ranked on Amazon.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't imagine that was an easy task, because I'm sure they got a couple going on there. And yeah, again, like, the success of the book, fair play. But with regard to the toys, why toys? When you guys started the business, why was it toys? Why? Because I suppose most people start a business and it's probably not toys to think of.
Exactly. And by the way, when we started a business 32 years ago, not only did no one do toys, no one did a business. Like, everyone it was about never honoring what your passion was. It was about picking a career that you could be in your entire life and ride that escalator from the beginning to the end and move up the ladder and retire there. And you weren't supposed to, satisfy your soul. It was just about doing your obligation to yourself and your family of making a living. So I think no one started a business. And then when we decided it was going to be toys, because honestly, we wanted to do something that we knew could impact the world in just, a simple way, but that had the ability to change someone's perceptive in the way they live their life. And we thought, if you could unleash the imagination of a child and allow them to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, that might change their lives. So we very early on, and all our parents were involved in education. We loved children. We have 6. So we proved that in having our own. But in fact, people ask us all the time, are you Irish? And we're like, Jewish, but
Don't start. Don't start.
That's right. We have a lot of children too. So I think
yeah, it's very Irish of you.
Yeah, it is.
I've heard that a fair bit actually before. But never.
And by the way, we have Irish twins. So 2 of our 6 are, well, actually 4 of our 6 are like a year apart, or less, 11 months apart. So we have like 2 sets of Irish twins too. So believe me, we've gotten our share of being called Irish.
Well,
It's a massive compliment, first of
yeah,
all. I mean,
I've never heard someone say that before, and I love it. Thank you.
You're
We
welcome.
Irish twins. People call us Irish. Oh my god.
Yeah, they do all the time. They're like, because whenever the first question they always ask when they hear we have sex, and I always say it, I'm like, yes, they're both from two of us, because they always think like it must be a blended family or it must be a second or third marriage. And I always just answer, I'm like, yep, same two parents, 6 children. We've been together 35 years. So they just, that gets it out. And then they say, are you Irish?
yeah, it's weird cultural differences how that's considered weird in America, whereas I know friends who have siblings of, I'm gonna say somewhere in the 12.
Yeah, I know someone who's 12
Yeah,
siblings.
like they're perfectly normal. It's like cheaper by the dozen, but like more normalized.
Well, no, it's not exactly normal. You look at the dad and you look at the mom like. that's normally how it goes on. You see the 12 kids get out of the car. It's like a clown car. They're driving
Yeah,
a bus.
I'm sure 6 though is very ordinary there, right?
No,
not ordinary,
not
but
anymore.
more.
The families
not
got
anymore,
way
no.
smaller here in the last maybe 40 to 50 years.
Yeah, here too. And the birth rate, I mean, I just was in a conversation with someone, the birth rate has gone way down now.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's the lowest it's been. They thought during COVID, there'd be this big baby boom, but no, if anything, it created more fear about the future and fewer people are having babies. So I think, we're even more different in the having 6. But we joke, we said back when we had our 6, we said, we're in the toy business. If we lead by example and we encourage everyone to have 6 children, our business will like explode.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, why is no one following us? Like all our friends are having 2 or 3. Like where are all the big families?
Yeah. The big families have definitely gotten less popular in the last couple of years, and me and Jared are big into the environment, and to be honest, it's not the worst thing. You look at our world, we're just a little bit, tiny bit overpopulated at the moment.
So true.
We had a guy get on. He's a great guy. He's been on a fair few times, but it's probably the most out there thing he said. The Earth can only sustain 500 million to 1 billion people sustainably.
Wow.
And
he's right.
It's one of those things. It says apparently he's right, but I really wish he isn't. But yeah.
I know, and that's why it's so important to make sure that your children like bring something to the world that can help it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
What was I going to say? Selling like nearly 1 billion toys must be crazy. Like that when you found out like it was nearly, or it hit that number, or was nearly at that number, what was your reaction?
I think it was, I mean, Doug and I have always been criticized for thinking differently about our business. And I think every step along the way, we were told, can't be done. You'll never do that. You can't make high quality toys that are low priced. You can't distribute the way you distribute. I mean, it was every single juncture. We kept hearing, you can't. And I think when you believe something so deeply and you see it in your head and you work night and day to make it happen for decades and go through so much struggle because really we had every single calamity befall us you could imagine, to the point where we said we would never do it again. And now we're doing it again with our new venture Lifelines, but we really said we would never do it again. I think when you see it resonating and you see that it's kind of changed the way people think about something like play, it's so satisfying, I have to say. It's kind of like, and again, I don't like to say it, but it is, both Doug and I are motivated by a chip on our shoulder. Insecurity drives entrepreneurship, just so you know. I never felt validated for who I was, so I needed to achieve. And I'm sure Doug is very much the same thing. So it is kind of like, look at us now, honey. There is a little bit like all you naysayers, follow your heart, do what you think is right, lead authentically, and good things happen. So it's a little bit of like just satisfaction, I would
If
say.
if there's anyone who can say like, look at us now, I reckon it's you. In fairness, like you have done something crazy. Like when I looked at like the background of the business and like when it started, you have done seriously well. And that never mind like, the struggle is number one, but then add that you have 6 kids. Then add that you were going through a lot of stuff and you were managing at the same time. I don't even know what Doug was doing, but like just on your side, you.
He was, yeah. He faced the brunt of all the worry, and I never would have even done the business if it weren't for him. I was so terrified and following convention that if he didn't really encourage me to step off that treadmill and follow his lead, because he had much more courage than I did, I never would have done it. So I think the two of us together were a really good team because, and we never would have made it. The things we went through were so horrific and challenging that if we didn't have the support of each other, we would have given up. We came this close to giving up many times together. Like alone, we never would have made it. So it's really incredible to have a partner who you can really turn to when it gets very, very tough.
I mean, that's just part of the importance of teamwork.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm glad to hear a success story because myself and Thomas would be shouting down the phone at each other. We would be a terrible team.
Yeah,
anyway,
but
it's good fun.
That happens too. I mean, it's not always bliss, and I think you have to have those times when you're disagreeing over something to get to that good resolution. So, partners always have disagreements. My only advice that I give, because we mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, and advice is only as good as the person who gives it and if they resonate with you. So I always say it's just from my own experience. But, if you think of partnership as a circle, my advice is just don't be both the same half of the circle. That is not a good partnership, because then you're in each other's stuff all the time. And if you're both strong people, that will never work. So Doug and I are fortunate because we're both so strong and we're so opinionated about what we do, but we're different halves of the circle, so that like he can do his stuff and, I love it and I applaud it. And he'll come to me when he needs, when he wants my opinion, and on my half of the circle, and the same thing. Like I do my thing, I lead with my own vision. And then when I want his input, I ask it, and it's awesome. But that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he's worked so well as a team.
Yeah.
But when you brought up like that people are having less kids, I just had a question there. Like, have you guys noticed that in your sales? Like, have you noticed like people are buying less toys for their kids? Because you've been doing this for decades. Like, I don't even know anyone who buys like toys for the kids all that much. Normally, it's one of these, an iPad, and maybe an Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole phenomenon called age compression, which was that age compression, which is basically people are getting older, younger, and toys that, when I was young, I played with Barbie until I was like 12, 13. And that wasn't abnormal. And Legos until, and now Legos are more sophisticated. So they are going up, but I'm talking the simple Legos, like the box of Legos I played with till I was close to 14. I mean, today, could you imagine a 14-year-old playing with Barbie? Like
I
never.
know 14-year-olds I've seen smoke. Like just walking around town, have a cigarette.
Like 14-year-olds are like having kids now. Like they're, it's not like, so it's called age compression, and absolutely it's affected buying toys. I mean, our competition is no longer other toys. Our competition is the iPad and the phone and technology and overscheduling in general. Like in the US, sports have become, because everyone thinks their child is going to go to college and play sports, or everyone has that dream. Like lessons and private teams and club teams are starting at age 5. So that's when they would be playing with our toys. So definitely, I think we have to be a bigger piece of a bigger percentage of a smaller piece of pie to grow.
Okay, so rather than like change into like I guess consoles, whatever, you're kind of just like, okay, we'll just be like the bigger side of the toy industry, or as big a slice as you can be. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, we would never change. I mean, I think, or at least my philosophy is, very anti-screen. Not that it's not great in life. I mean, it's changed my life and as a business person, but in young children, it's extremely damaging to the development of their critical thinking and verbal skills and imagination and developing resilience. So definitely not in that.
So, would you mind if I ask this? How old are your kids when they get a phone?
That's a great question. We wait until, I mean, it's not that late, but they're going to middle school because
what age is that in the US?
that is 11.
Okay.
Because it's when they become independent. So in middle school is when they start, there's no sign out process anymore for your kids. So after school, they can go home with anyone. And that's when that becomes the tool for alerting us where they're going and where they are, and giving them the independence to be able to go downtown or go home with someone. So it was for a particular purpose, which is like, and also that's when they start to make their own plans together. And that's also an incredible independence, right? I'm not making the play date anymore. Like they're creating. So it has to be managed. And it's a slippery slope. And no one says, I mean, during COVID, I was terrible. We slipped so far backward because I had to work. Like I work full time and my kids were home on Zoom school, and Zoom school was like, I don't know why, it was like 3 hours a day. It was like, what is going on? And they couldn't leave the house, because we were in quarantine. So it came, like technology became kind of their babysitter, which I was so against, but like, that's the point. Sometimes there's no choice. And I felt like it was one of those situations for me and everybody.
Yeah. I mean, like you need your own time, and obviously you're working at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know people have had that struggle as well, especially people who didn't have enough screens in the house. So, like if like some households before this had like one laptop between them. So you might have, people have to do like a meeting at work on the laptop, is old, like crappy computer, and then, someone's got class on it. Yeah. And then the phone's not good enough to do either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a rough one. It was so bad. People buying so many computers that there's still right now that there's a shortage in what are they called? Microconductors. Yes, there's still a shortage in those.
I know.
So
I'm with it.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose you're probably better off keeping the kids off the screens. But I'm surprised you said 11, because like I was pretty late to get a phone. I was like 12, but I know people who are older to get them.
Yeah, I think here, here that's really probably pretty late, the latest anybody, because then what happens? So you think about peer pressure. If you don't have it in middle school and all the kids are making their plans on their phones, then your child suddenly is removed from the group. And suddenly they can't make plans and they're not included. And so it becomes, for a parent, like, I have no choice, right? So you're brought along in this like societal pressure, and everybody's getting it either before in like second grade, or middle school is the latest anyone is getting it here.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just going along with the, like, I want my kid, because that's the worst possible thing for me, maybe even worse than the screen, is that my child will fall into isolation and then despair. That's like a direct channel to despair.
Yeah.
So it's balancing competing issues. And am I right? I have no idea. I just basically did what I thought would be best for my child.
Well, you're right.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, that's all you can do. And then you have to, then that's why I always joke I had 6 children, because I had to rectify the mistakes I made with the prior 2. But now I'm like out of chances. So the last 2, It's like, I'm so sorry. No one's going to learn from your mistakes other than the younger parents I can try to help educate.
I'm sure your kids are fine.
They're okay.
Thomas, do you have a question here?
I was just gonna say, like during COVID, like especially with like social media and like chatting with the lads, and every day it really helped, stay in contact with them and prevent myself from going mad.
Yeah.
So.
Imagine like, being a kid and your entire thing is like seeing your friends at school. Now you don't see them. Now what? Like, you'd go a bit crazy, or you'd be kind of coming into your mom and dad every few minutes saying, "Mom, mom," just driving them mental basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It was a challenging time that no one had any preparation for. So we all just were like, I don't know what to do. Let's just do it. And there were tremendous repercussions, but I think, it was unprecedented. And it's like what I'm saying about having a practice. I think maybe, now that we know what we know, we'll hopefully develop better tools ahead of time to be prepared if something like this should happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're hoping. But yeah, like you couldn't prepare for this. And if you did, it's kind of suspicious.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought you were part of the conspiracy.
Yeah, the old Illuminati or something. Yeah, that's just crazy. But I guess moving forward with you, like, do you have any intention of writing another book, or is that the big surprise?
That's a great question. Well, I'm creating a ton of products, so that's really exciting. And I am writing another book. That's, yes. So I'm doing both. There you go.
Okay, so you're staying busy. And has COVID given you more opportunity to stay busy, or has it hindered your workflow?
Oh my gosh, the blessing again. COVID has had a lot of negative things, so I don't want to deny the fact that there's been a lot of loss for people. But for introverts, in that sense, it's been a gift, because I really will take any excuse not to see people. And in a way that's bad. I have to force myself to be social. So for me, it's been such a blessing in creativity. I've had more time than ever to just be with myself and ponder and create and build things. And I think in a way, I'm terrified of it, ending, because now I have to do more stuff with people and less time to just do my own creative stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for giving us the chance today to talk to you, like, especially if you're really introverted, like, yeah, glad you gave us a shot. So I guess it's kind of everything covered, unless you have anything left over, Thomas, do you?
You keep mentioning these verses. What exactly are they?
Oh, wow.
You said you wrote verses. What do you mean by verses?
I mean, I wrote rhyming verses. They're some people might call them poems, but I call them verses. And basically, they came into my head from the time I was like 3 years old on, to help bring order to my thoughts and feelings and questions that were utterly unanswerable and disordered. So they answer my deepest questions and ask a lot of questions and talk about the beauty and the pain of the world. And in my book, there are close to 1,000 of them. So I wrote them as a child. I thought they were too despairing and simple to ever be appreciated. So I hid them away from the world my whole life. And when I finally unearthed them to write my book, I had 3,000, like 3,500 of them that had never come out. And I had lost a whole bunch of them. So I'm sure I had like 4,000 or 5,000. So they became my bid for being seen as I truly was, because they were the truest reflection of everything I thought and felt. And while they stayed in the dark, so did I. So part of my own story was to bring them out of the darkness and allow them to hopefully touch others the way they had touched me. And that's why my book is called Lifelines. because they were lifelines, lines in writing verse, because they're lines of verse, but also lifelines in being my beacons of hope in a really dark time.
That's very nice.
That's I like the name of it at least. I like the meaning behind it. It wasn't just slapped together.
No, not at all. Nothing is slapped together.
There you go. So I guess that's kind of it. But like again, thank you so much for getting on.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's my pleasure. You're both awesome. And if anyone wants to find us, our community is international and it's entirely free. Doug and I are doing this as a labor of love to help others feel not so alone. And it's lifelines.com, and we offer workshops, and we have this journey that you can take, and it's all free. So we welcome anyone who wants to find a really beautiful, warm, empathetic community.
Well, you know where to find it. But if people want to check you out, where can they find you?
I mean, I am at Melissa Bernstein at lifelines.com. They can write me personally. I will answer them back. And our community, everything, our whole ecosystem is lifelines.com. And our Instagram is at Seek Lifelines.
There you go. So if you know where to find it, if you want to find her, you know where to find her. There you go. If you got this far, fair play. Have a good one. Take it handy. And bye-bye.